Hi, this is Bob Kraus, and this is the Campus Alarm System Part 2 Overview and Specifications. We are going to talk in this section about the alarm network, the receivers, and also the alarm PCs, and all the hardware and connectivity that is used to put these all together. By this time, you have already uh, watched the basic overview and also Part 1, which talks about these parts here, the detector, the panel, the communication device. So we're going to take it from this point. So we know that when a detector detects a condition, it relays it to the panel or the relay. It sends that information to the communication device. The communication device then sends it to the campus alarm network, which is our first subject. So we talked about in the first part about the IP DAC, how it takes telephone connectivity and it takes that information off the telephone quote unquote call and converts it into information on the network and then puts it onto the alarm network. So we're talking about this next step here. Campus Alarm Network is configured as a separate IP network. It's not separately wired, but it's configured as a VLAN, which is a virtual LAN, virtual local area network. So all that configuration goes on network routers and switches. So the cables themselves are not separated. They're all plugged into the same equipment, but the configuration allows us IT, to separate them into different networks that are separately managed, I guess you could say. So the alarm network uses the IP address of 10.24.x.x. That could be any number from 0 to 254. And this is just an example of a switch using a VLAN configuration. So let's say all these four of these PCs are connected to the same switch, and then the switch configuration, IT goes in and actually says these two ports are on one network and these two ports are on another network. So even though they're all connected to the same box per se, they do not communicate with each other directly. So A can communicate with B just fine. C can communicate with D just fine. But in order for A or B to communicate with C or D, they'd actually have to go to a device called a router to get across. So the switch closet in the police office is somewhere up a couple floors up or inside a closet. Those switches all those switches are configured with different VLANs on different ports. So now that we know that, basically we're just going to talk about the network now as a cloud. Okay, it's a virtual LAN and it is a cloud. So now anything connected to this, basically anything on this network will be able to communicate with each other. Same here with the campus network. So here is a basic diagram of the way the equipment is connected for the university police alarm system. So this is inside the police office. Okay, so we have some switches, Ethernet switches, so network switches. The campus alarm network is connected to one. The alarm network is connected to another, and then the devices are then connected to that. So we have our two PCs connected to the regular network. We have our two visor alarms connected to the alarm network. And then we have these two devices called Digi PortServers, which are connected also to the campus network. I'm going to talk a little bit now about the alarm receiver itself. The alarm receivers actually are these two blue boxes here. So they have two connections. They have serial connections, which are outputs that go to this Digi port. And then we have two network connections, which are basically inputs to it. So we have an input from the network and output from serial. The alarm receiver receives network communications from each communication device. So all those IP DACs out there, every building has it. It's on that 10.24 networks, on that alarm network, and then it communicates directly to this receiver. it translates that information and sends it to the alarm PC via a serial communication through a special switch called the Digi port server. If there was ever a problem with the port server or any communication in that part, um, the alarm receivers actually will be able to receive the signals, but then they would not be able to pass them on, and then they will provide an audible alarm when the next communication is received from any of the campus communication devices. So if you ever hear that alarm beeping in one of those blue rack-mounted devices, that basically means I have a signal and I cannot pass it on to the PC. So the alarm receiver's there. Again, the signals come in, the IP DAC communicators all come in, they send information in, whether that be alarm, test, trouble, etc. Comes through the switch and goes to both of these visor alarms here. And then the one that is the primary will then take that information and send it out the serial switch to the Digiport, and then the Digiport will connect to the Ethernet switch and get it back to the alarm PC. So we have two alarm receivers. They're configured as primary and standby failover system. If only one alarm receiver is active at a time, and if you look at this picture here, you'll see that this one at the bottom says Pri Visor Alarm 1, waiting for signals. This is the one that is the primary right now. And then this one, it says unit in standby. This is the failover standby at this time. So the bottom one is receiving signals at this time. The standby one will basically just monitor the condition of the primary. If there's a problem, a failure, standby will initiate a failover process and take over as the primary. Now, when it does this, it does send a signal to the alarm PC and says, "Hey, failover has happened," and you'll see it'll say "tell dat" and it'll say "failover." On recovery, in other words, when the primary is back up and running, that failover will happen again, and it'll reestablish itself as the primary, again sending another signal to the alarm PC saying that a failover has happened. So if you get one failover, chances are you're probably going to get another one unless it's catastrophic and one of these boxes is completely dead and offline. So we have that alarm receiver, and again, that serial communication is going to the Digiport. Actually, for alarm 6, it's going to port 1, and for alarm 1, it's going to port 3. And that's very important that that you know that they go to a particular port, because that has to do with the software configuration inside alarm 3. So we'll see that alarm 3 knows which ports these are through connection with this device. Okay, so we're going to talk about these now. The Digiport servers, they are switches. They're configured as a manual failover system. So if the main port server fails, then operator will actually have to manually move the serial cables to the backup port server. So what it does is you can see here from this picture, there are 4 serial port inputs, and then there is an Ethernet connection. So what will happen is the serial communication goes into the port, then this processes it and puts it into Ethernet packets and sends that Ethernet packet out to the configured servers. So the alarms PC and this are configured to talk to each other via the network. And so again, here is the manual failover portion here. So in other words, if this guy were to die, okay, then you basically have to take this cable connected to port 1 of this, take this cable connected to port 3 of this, and all things being equal, then the alarm PC should stop complaining, and then everything should continue to work. So let's talk about the alarm PC now. So we said before, and we know that the alarm PC has some configuration, some software, which connects it to these Digiport servers, and it also has information about the alarm receiver and what's going on inside it. So it knows about both of these guys, and the software is configured in such a way to where it can communicate. So let's talk a little bit about the way it's cabled up. It's pretty important to know. Alarm 03 is our main alarm server. Alarm 04 is our backup. So it's a standby backup. It is not running the alarm server software at this time. All it is actually doing is going in and doing a real-time backup of the alarm center database, which is in Alarm 03. That has all the configuration as far as the accounts go, the types of alarms, contact information, user information, etc. That's all inside that database. So about every 15 minutes or so, it goes and grabs a copy of that. Now, these are wired up this way. The keyboard, the video, and the mouse, and the audio are all connected to this thing called a KVM switch. And that's that little switch with the buttons on the front that's on the rack. KVM stands for keyboard video monitor. So it's basically a switch that allows you to add multiple PCs onto one place and then have them, you be able to use a keyboard and a monitor and a mouse to control them. And you just switch between the devices. Also, the audio connection is part of the KVM switch also. Now, it's very important when you have this KVM switch on is that when Alarm 03, which is the active alarm PC, it should be switched to Alarm 03. And the reason why is because this audio goes into this alarms, the KVM switch, and then it goes out and goes to the speaker in the dispatch office. So when you hear the alarm, audio alarm, it's because this path is right. Now, if you're getting alarms on the monitor at your desk when you're remoted in, but you're not hearing anything, there could possibly be a reason. One reason could possibly be is that the switch is switched to Alarm 04, and then of course Alarm 04 is not going to give you any audio information at this time because it's not doing the job. So you want to make sure this is connected. The switch is connected to Alarm 03 at this time, and then the speaker will work. Now, the alarm PCs are configured as a manual failover system. So in other words, if the main PC fails, then we'll actually have to shut down the primary, bring the backup PC up and then launch the Alarm Center software. It's pretty much as easy as that, but I will provide a detailed instruction in another video and show you exactly what needs to be done. Now let's talk a little bit about that Alarm Center software, and I want to show you some things that are important. Now you've probably seen these things, these little windows on the screen from time to time when you're looking at the Alarm Center PC. Well, these guys here are the ports for the Digi PortServers. So when I talked about those ports, here's the main Digi server, Digi PortServer, and it's connected to the receivers. And because it's connected to the receivers, we have a green bar, which means it's a live connection. This guy here, the backup Digi PortServer, is not connected to the receivers at this time, and so there's no green bar. So they're just sitting there and they're configured and ready to work. The port is lit, it's active, which means that it is connected to the DigiPort server, but it is not connected on the back end. The serial port connector is not plugged in on this one. Here you can see serial port connector is plugged in, and also you can see that this one is the primary receiver because this is the information that is coming through. So this information here, to take it all the way back to the beginning, is from the panel or from the IP DACT from that system in the building, and it's going to send either a test signal or it's going to send an alarm. That alarm goes through the network, goes through into the switches, goes over to the receiver receives it, sends it through the Digi port server, and it shows up here as it's being handed off to the Alarm Center PC. So you don't want to turn these off. You do not want to click the Xbox and close these ever. And they should look this way. They should all be lit, port lit, active lit. When this one, only one of them should probably be receiving. If there is a failover, you might find some information on one on the standby and some on the primary, because this is just a log. So if this one goes into failover, then this starts up, then you're going to start seeing messages showing up here. When the messages do show up, the little data light blinks at that time. So you don't see that blinking all that often, but there it is. So this information right here has to do with the Digi port server and the connection to the receivers. Very important. This is just an internal log, just lets you know how things are going and you know how this communication is working. Now, the rest of Alarm Center software and the rest of the troubleshooting and recovery methods will be covered in another video. So at this point, we'll just go back over here and take a look again. And here's our Alarm Center PC. Again, we can see that the alarms will come in through the 10.24 network into the TelDat visor alarm. It'll send that information via serial to Digiport. It'll send that information via network through this switch to the alarm PC. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, just let me know. Just send an email to Krausr, that's Krausr, at mst.edu. Also, you can play this over and over, go back and forward, listen to it, and get your head around what you see when you're actually looking at that Alarm Center PC. All right, have a great day and a safe day, and I will talk to you later.